Yes, for a part-time job.
Listen to her long enough in the office, make it never want to even entertain the idea.
Yeah,
I'm stressing out
I have
because
5
we're
kids,
dog
so-
sitting right now and I'm scared to death. My greyhound, my dad's greyhound is gonna kill our cat. That's what's worrying me right
yeah. 5 kids are a lot. Just having fun though, yeah.
Sound fun though.
I had a dog that liked to play with cats.
Yeah,
Youngest son, and his family came and they brought their cat. They didn't tell us they were bringing their cat. Anyway, so they brought this cat in. Luckily, it was inside of the little carrier thing. Holy bucket, that dog wanted to play with that cat big time.
oh yeah. Dog always plays with the cat and then the cat runs away from the dog most of the time,
Yep.
it seems like. Rachel, I'm keeping an eye on my email because last time we did this in the conference room,
Yeah.
Bill tried to log in on Google Meet rather than the Zoom link. I took away the Google Meet
Hopefully that.
from the calendar invite. I put the Zoom link in there, so hopefully he's good.
Either of them are on yet.
No. My plan is if we get to 6:15 with no quorum, I will call Brent.
Maybe he'll be in the car and
And hopefully one of the other two.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What do I need for quorum? 3?
3,
I apologize about the monitors. They've been out for like
Oh,
3
no problem.
weeks. So
I printed this one off. Oh. Word. Recognize it.
There's Nicole.
Cole's getting launched up.
all right, getting there now.
Nicole, can you hear okay?
Yep, I'm good.
Awesome. Just so you know, we are awaiting to see if Bill can call in.
Okay,
He had some challenges last time that I think I've instructed him on correcting. Brent emailed me not that long ago saying he might not make the meeting. So it's you and Rachel right now. Catherine's on vacation, so my plan is to call Brent at 6:15 if we still do not have quorum. Just FYI.
okay, sounds good.
There we go.
Oh, yeah.
I think we got Bill.
Now.
Bill, can you hear us?
You betcha, sorry.
Oh, no problem. We've got quorum now, just so that you know. Brent was running a little behind and he may not make the meeting. So we've got you, Nicole, and Rachel, who is going to chair the meeting. And we can now start.
Yes, with that, it's 6:03 and I will call the meeting to order. Hillary, you wanna call the roll?
Miller,
Here,
McLaughlin,
Here,
Thorson, Parker,
Yes.
Hinders.
All right, our first item, the approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
I can
I move
approve.
we,
I think I heard a move in the second there.
Sounded like Nicole moved and Bill seconded.
correct.
We do a roll call for that. All those in favor? Aye.
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 The minutes were distributed ahead of time from our meeting in April. If you've had an opportunity to review those, can we get a motion to approve those minutes?
I approve.
I move we second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you for that housekeeping. At this point, we'll welcome our guests to the meeting tonight. Thank you for attending. Thank you for your patience as we work through these quorum issues. It can be difficult in the heat of summer to get everyone. Here, we will run through the agenda as it was posted. And so folks will have an opportunity when there's time for each item. So at this time, do we have a motion to open the first item?
You can just
On the
open the public hearing
Oh,
on the first
okay.
item if you want,
I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on the first item.
and read it if you will.
This is the public hearing and recommendation on a special use permit request from NutriSport Smoothie LLC to allow for a single tenant building with a vehicle drive-through service at parcel 642500800010. It is 6:06. Elliot, can you provide the staff report on this item?
Yep, so a little bit of backstory. I'll try to be as educational and brief as possible. This parcel is located within a planned unit development. For our board, a planned unit development basically assigns customized zoning regulations to a piece of property. It can be an individual lot, it can be multiple lots. It can be a very large swath of land. In this case, the Hughes Century Crossing Planned Unit Development encompasses this and many other pieces of land that are being developed right now in the city. We drafted that PUD document with some customized zoning for an area of the PUD known as Land Use Parcel G, and then also for Land Use Parcel E. Land Use Parcel E is where this property is located. And in that document, we put a provision in there that said before this developed, the applicant would have to come before city council and get a zoning amendment to confirm what was going to be allowed there. The applicant did that about 2 months ago, I think, is when we completed it. And what we did is we granted permissions for land uses that are permitted in parcel G. So you can think of this piece of land, even though it's not located in it, it has the permissions of land use parcel G. And then there's a list of zoning details underneath that within the document governing the parcel about what is allowed. One of those things that is allowed on the parcel is a single tenant building with a drive-through vehicle service. In other words, Most of the time, this is gonna be a restaurant with a drive-through window. The PUD document outlining the zoning requirements say that this is permitted as long as they acquire a special use permit from the Board of Adjustment. So we are taking them through that process now. And fundamentally, what that contains procedurally is a review by the Planning and Zoning Commission, which happened last night. And then a review by Board of Adjustment to determine if they should be allowed to do that. So I copied and pasted the land use parcel sections from the PUD that describe all of these things. So under the bullet point marked 7, kind of going backwards on these a little bit. But in land use parcel G, bullet item number C just says allowed special uses. Single tenant building with a vehicle drive-through service, subject to the issuance of a special use permit. And then demonstrating how that use fits cohesively into the town center development of land use parcel G. I will go into that a little bit more in a moment. But then the amendment that they applied for is above that under land use parcel E. Bullet item number permitted principal accessory uses and special uses get lumped in with those in a PUD as provided for land use parcel G. So complicated way of saying that this parcel is eligible for anything that can be permitted on parcel G of the PUD. Are there any questions at this juncture before I proceed? Okay. So the request, again, to reiterate, is to allow for a vehicle drive-through service at this parcel. We published summary of notifications for the Des Moines Register on June 5th. We also sent letters to property owners within 200 feet of the parcel. The property in question is at the northwest, I almost said it backwards, the northwest corner of Chatham Avenue and East 18th Street. So I'll use this map to show it a little bit better. It's just north of where the sports complex has been constructed and east of where the new Fairway building is. Wish the aerial image was a little more up to date, but here we are. And so this will be the first piece of land developed on this corner of the development area for the most part. The exhibit that they are showing has the drive-through service coming off of East 18th Street with queuing to the east of the building. And when we wrote the code governing this piece of ground, the main goal was to not just have a building plopped in the middle of a parcel of land with a drive-through lane wrapped around it. The idea being that in a more town center focused development area, we didn't want to waste land basically on drive-through lanes. And if you look at a lot of drive-through restaurants, there's an awful lot of space dedicated to just queuing in the parcel limits. So we thought, how could we do this a little bit more creatively? The proposed use is for a fitness beverage business. So it's a, by our definitions and code, a restaurant. We also know that a beverage focused building isn't going to be quite as, it's less of a restaurant than like a Red Lobster would be, right? That's a very much like a sit down type place. So we were trying to take into account the nature of the building itself. And something else that we did when consulting the designers was try to get some street parking involved in the site design. The property owner also owns the lot to the east and to the north of this. And so we've been collaborative in trying to get street parking added as a site plan element that'll both free up a little bit more space on the development lot for perhaps an expansion or a future phase of development, and also provides additional room if people just want to park on the street, walk inside, come back out. They don't have to navigate the maze of parking lot drive aisles. So we think the designers did that effectively. We recommended approval of the special use permit to the Planning and Zoning Commission. they didn't really have a whole lot of questions about it except for how circulation might work. I'll let Jason talk about that in a minute once I'm finished. But the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend the issuance of the special use permit for this use. I believe that pretty much sums everything up. The only thing now is for Board of Adjustment to ask any questions they have. I will do my best to answer them. Also, the applicant's representative can speak on it. And I'll cede my time.
Elliot, so for the intention behind putting this special use permit requirement into this development was for the making sure that the traffic situation and making sure the use of the space was appropriate. Is that what you're wanting the board then to evaluate, or can you help us understand again? I know for special use permits, it's not an unnecessary hardship finding. Our role is a little bit different. So can you kind of refresh the board on that?
Yeah, so for a special use permit regarding this code language, there's a little bit of, I don't want to call it give and take, but just a little bit more demanding of a review process that, that staff can, I guess, usher along, right? So, in a situation where they don't need a special use permit, you could just conceivably plop a building in the middle of a piece of land and then just ring it with a drive-through lane. In a town center setting, that's not a real efficient use of land. We'd rather see that maybe closer to the highway.
Chick-fil-A,
Like
where
a
you have like
Chick-fil-A,
the
exactly.
parking all the way around the lot.
One of the points of emphasis from community development on site plans moving forward has been to try to get the buildings moved closer to a road on one side or another. That way, if we find at a later date, you know what, we got too much parking on this lot, let's take out maybe that northern line of parking that's on that screen up there, and we can fit another building on the lot. So preserving those expansion opportunities and future development opportunities where we find them. So that's the main goal behind that language, and that gives us kind of a way to check for that by going through the special use permit process.
Any other questions for Elliot online? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and ask for a statement by the applicant. If you're here tonight, come on up, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Jason Ledden with Snyder and Associates here on behalf of the applicant. Our address is 2727 Southwest Snyder Boulevard in Ankeny. As Elliot mentioned, the reason for this request was due to keep the character of the town center zoning here. And we feel like with the true intent of the code, we have pushed this drive-through off to the side to use it in an efficient way. One of the reasons for the location of the building being pushed further to the north is there is intended to be patio space on that south side and take full advantage of that southwest afternoon sun and have folks be able to sit out there. Also another reason is per your example of the Chick-fil-A, we don't want that situation here, especially with the sports complex. So this drive-through allows for the stacking up to that window there as well. We feel that this drive-through is a good use for this facility with its intent, being the NutriSport smoothie shop and its association with the sports facility there. We feel like there is going to be a lot of that drive-through traffic. So we wanted to be able to provide this service in this area as well and not have a situation where we have a lot of folks parking on the street, parking in the parking lot. So we feel like we're providing multiple uses on this lot with the drive-through and folks that can come in. So I'd be happy to answer questions.
Any questions online for the applicant? Yeah. Any other comments from the public here tonight on this piece? Okay. All right. If there are no other questions, Nicole or Bill, I think we can entertain a motion to close, or I can just go ahead and close the public hearing portion of this consideration. And we can move to board consideration. So this is still, you can remain in the room, but we will deliberate and then come to a determination. So Nicole, Bill, any thoughts?
I guess my curiosity is, so in this particular situation, obviously I know we probably don't know what's going to extend on with future development. What does this look like if, like if they continue to extend this out from the building standpoint? And is that other lot that you were referring to, is that further than to the south that would allow for something like this? I'm just trying to understand if we get into a situation where we're allowing this, are we going to be in a situation where we kind of have to take that into consideration for all future buildings that would go on next to this?
So there's kind of two things going on when I was talking about future phases of development. I mentioned that the property owner owns adjacent land. That's to the east and to the north. The eastern property is completely separate from this. So I don't think that's what you were referring to, Nicole. When I'm talking about future development opportunities on this site, I'm referring to something that we haven't seen really in Norwalk ever, but happens in other places where basically, let's say this thing builds out exactly the way that it looks, and the owner decides, you know what, no one ever uses a certain amount of parking spaces. I feel like I can get rid of some and build an addition to my building, or even just parcel off part of the lot and have another developer come in and build something else. And by trying to shift the building away from the center of the lot and more towards the edge or to one side or the other, it just helps improve the viability of that at a later date. So that's kind of what I was talking about.
Okay.
As far as how this drive-through would impact those developments, that would be something we'd have to consider at that time. But since this is first, this is the thing that would be allowed to remain. Any future development would have to react to site conditions that are already here at the time.
Okay.
Can you pull up the overall aerial again?
Actually, this is a better aerial image.
Yeah. So the drive lane comes off of Chatham?
No, so what would happen here is East 18th Street would extend north, and the drive lane would come off of there just north of the intersection with Chatham.
And they would exit back onto Chatham then?
No, so Chatham is barely visible on this exhibit.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
Then this is where the sidewalk, so like the shaded area is where the sidewalk on East 18th would connect into it. Right at the bottom of the page, pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a little difficult without a complete picture, but it's just the stage of development that we're in. When we're called to ask ourselves if the site plan demonstrates how the use fits cohesively into the overall town center development. It sounds like based on the staff report, that's being really well thought through at the staff level and the city level, and that will continue to happen as this is finalized in the plans, and then also as the neighboring properties are evaluated for what's going to go in there. And it does seem like this type of business fits very well into the town center, given the other uses. And it sounds like we've met the needs of the procedural steps that are required for the special use permit. So I'd be in favor of granting the permit based on the information that's been shared here tonight.
I think I'll offer up one more comment about what community development's goals are with this type of property. One of the concerns about the sports complex that probably will never cease, honestly, is about availability of parking. One of the things that you want to do in a town center setting is encourage people to walk to the smoothie shop. You know, park once, explore on foot when you're between games, that sort of thing. So that's, you know, another aspect of why we included the provision about drive-throughs being subject to a special use permit within this development area. Because if you make everything a drive-through restaurant, kind of fights against the purpose you're trying to do with a town center feel. But this is a little bit more in that vein than, like you said, Rachel, a Chick-fil-A. Not that you can't design a Chick-fil-A, you know, in a way that works with this.
Right.
but
Nothing against
Dig-
Chick-fil-A. for the record.
Dig yourself out. There you go.
Memes online about, you know, people lining up for coffee versus people getting coffee, right? On a sidewalk cafe, so. I'll end it there.
Nicole or Bill, any other comments? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion. To
Yeah, no, I'm good. I will
I'm
approve the
good.
motion.
motion to approve there, Nicole?
Yes, sorry.
And Bill, did you second there? Was that what I
I'll
heard?
second.
McLaughlin,
Yes,
Miller,
Yes.
Parker.
Yes. All right. With that, I will open the public hearing and recommendation on a variance request from Wade Thompson to permit a patio space and accessory shade structure within the front yard setback of 1409 Sunset Drive. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. It is 6:25, and Elliot, can you provide the staff report on this item?
Yes, and I hope my voice holds out. I have a lot to say about this particular item, including new information that I received from the DOT today.
Okay.
Which, if you've ever tried to get information about right-of-way lines from the DOT, just know that give yourself
time.
a little bit of leeway. They did get it to me, though. I will give them credit, and it was a very interesting learning experience. So there's two things going on with this request. There is a request to have a patio space go further into the front yard setback than normally would be allowed by zoning. There's also a request to permit a shade structure covering said patio. Do my best to segment those out separately, but these are two different requests. We just lumped them into one item. And so I'll start out at the beginning of the staff report here. So this property at 1409 Sunset Drive, this one is a building that's been under some renovation and remodeling for a little while, and it's on Highway 28, just south of High Road. The route of the first request related to patios comes out of our base zoning. So the uncovered steps, patios, and decks, that's one item, are allowed to extend up to 15 feet into any front yard setback area and up to 25 feet in any rear yard setback area, provide a minimum 15-foot setback is maintained. So in other words, a good example of that, the base setback in most residential zoning districts is 30 feet. You can extend a patio uncovered 15 feet into that, and then you've still got 15 feet, the edge of the patio to your front property. Not every property has the same front yard setback. Some properties were designed that way. Others, as we'll see in a bit over time, have had their front setbacks change. So that's the first piece of code. The second piece of code dealing with accessory structures is that in any non-single or two-family residential zoning district, all accessory buildings and structures shall meet the setback requirements of the principal building or structure. So accessory structures, that's not the house, not the restaurant itself, if that's the type of property, they need to be principal building setbacks rather than be in within the front setback area or the side or the rear. So those are the things that we're dealing about. Typically in Board of Adjustment, we deal with accessory buildings going past front facades on corner lots. This one is not of that nature because it is not a single family residential or two-family residential parcel. So those are the two requests: encroachment of a patio beyond the required 15-foot front setback, and then also to allow for the shade structure that the applicant is requesting over that patio area, which would be an accessory structure in a front setback. So we sent the letters to the landowners within 200 feet. We published the hearing for today on June 5th in the Des Moines Register. And now we can go back to property description. So as I mentioned before, this property is just south of High Road. It actually is double fronted. It's L-shaped with frontage on High Road and also on Highway 28. Property contains a two-level building that was constructed in 1978. It has been home to a variety of different commercial uses. There are also 4 apartment units on the upper story of the building. So it's one of the few mixed-use structures that we have in town. We use the county assessor data to try to figure out where the front setback on this property was, and that was kind of the main thing driving a lot of the discussion about whether or not a variance is required. Initially, upon our review, it looked like the property line is 25 feet from the front facade of the building. We speculated for a long time that the front property line may actually be 37.5 feet from the building rather than 25 feet. And if that were the case, the applicant's patio space could be approved without a variance because he's requesting a 20-foot deep patio. If it were 37.5 feet, that would leave 17.5. He needs 15 feet of setback. Good to go. Because there was doubt about where that property line was, we figured we should just go through the process here, just to be above board as possible. Based on my research with the DOT, the property line appears to be in the correct location because of historic railroad right-of-way from the 1930s. Now, I don't have a copy of any zoning codes from the 1930s, but I do not believe that when the railroad was ceding territory to the Iowa Department of Transportation, that the setback implications of that transaction were being taken into consideration during subsequent code rewrites. Basically, what I'm saying is, because of railroad activity almost a century ago, this property has lost territory in its front yard that may or may not be confirmed by the county's geographic line data. So we think that the property line is in the right place, but it's a bit of an outlier. Other properties around this have property lines that are in fact closer to the right-of-way line of the highway, the center line. Gosh, I didn't have time to rehearse this part. So anyway, we do believe that the building is 25 feet from the front property line, although adjacent properties have property lines that are closer to the street. And so knowing that, we illustrated in the staff report that the zoning ordinance permits patios in any zoning district. They may extend up to 15 feet into that setback area, provided a 15-foot separation is maintained. In the case of this property, that would allow for a 10-foot deep patio by right. And then on the second piece of code that we're looking at tonight, accessory structures in a C2 zoning district, which is where this is located, need to meet principal building setbacks. Based on the way that our codes have been written between the date this building was built and now, I checked with Luke on this. We determined that the front setback for this building is technically 30 feet, even though it is 20 feet from the front property line. So it is a legal, non-conforming building in that regard. When the property was developed, the front setback was 25 feet. So that building would have been built to that standard. Some of the details that are on kind of the applicant's side of the situation. As I mentioned before, the property is spatially non-conforming. It was 100% in conformance when it was built. The earliest piece of zoning legislation that I have on file in my office has a front setback of 0 feet for this parcel. So that just tells you a little bit about what has happened to buildable areas on a lot over time. The owners expressed concerns that patio space is a integral part of a small commercial footprint such as this. And I think staff would agree about that. It's not a very large building, and making a commercial enterprise viable is certainly benefited by having patio space available. And then also, we've been working with the applicant on those renovations to the existing structure in order to provide enough patron load for that outdoor space to be accommodated by the building itself also. So we got 3 points of emphasis in our variance review. We have, again, 2 elements on this. So would allowing an extended patio create an unnecessary hardship? Would permitting the accessory structure create an unnecessary hardship? Secondly, would approving either of these things have a negative impact on the surrounding property owners? And then the third criterion, does the site have any unique conditions that prevent the applicant from using the property in a manner similar to those around it? So after reviewing the requests and facts, the main code language about the patio setbacks and accessory structures are fairly uniformly enforced in the city of Norwalk. We have not had a patio or accessory structure request of this nature before us in the past for Board of Adjustment. So we think that the code language is pretty solid in that regard. Secondly, would this be a thing that provides that has a negative impact on surrounding property owners? I do not believe that would be the case. There would still be about 12 feet of separation between the edge of this area and the trail that runs along the highway. In my mind and staff's opinion, that's plenty of room. 15 feet from the neighboring trail. Sorry about that. And then, where is the exact right-of-way line on this? It seems like because of that railroad right-of-way situation, the line was kind of just inherited from infrastructure that was planned and never built by a railroad company. So I'll just state that for what it is. We don't believe that granting the variance would cause undue hardship for any neighboring property owners. And then the third criterion, are there unique conditions that would prevent alternative zoning compliant site designs to that proposed? I wrote out quite a lot after this compared to normal reports. So we did confirm where we believe the right-of-way line to be relative to this property. If you go back and look at past zoning ordinances, what the setbacks were decades ago, even when the building was built, there was a lot more leniency in the buildable area. I don't think it's necessarily the burden of individual property owners to quality control zoning updates that happen that increase building setbacks, thereby decreasing buildable areas. Philosophically, it just doesn't make sense to me. So while the site maybe doesn't have any unique conditions in and of itself, it does have a different front property line than adjacent properties that were not impacted by that railroad line that I mentioned many times already. So, the setback regulations aren't really unique, but maybe just the line placement on the lot is. So As far as the staff recommendation goes, we decided that permitting the patio to go 20 feet out from the building facade makes sense. We think that that would result in the patio's outermost edge being about where it would be permitted relative to where the trail is, if the site were a bit more compliant with zoning codes today. As for the second piece about the accessory structure, we're recommending denial of that. We just don't think that that's a thing that anybody else in town is doing. We haven't granted a variance in the past for any other property, put up a shade structure like that. I should make one clarification about this, because a lot of folks might look at the adjacent property and ask, well, Elliott, Eldorado's got a structure out front. Where does that fall into things? At the time that that property was developed, we determined that the structure at Eldorado is a pergola, which was not defined by the building code. And therefore, we decided that it was simply a cover rather than a structure. There's a little bit of a definitional technicality going on there, but that's what we decided. And so if you go into building code language, it talks about openness, and the openness of that pergola we determined after going through our list of definitions and an alphabet soup of code did not interfere with the allowance for its construction over the patio. So I'm summarizing a bit there, but our recommendation ultimately is for approval of the patio space, but not for the shade cover to be installed. So Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed that request a couple of weeks ago. No recommendation is required from P and Z on an item like this, but they did not have any opposition to allowing the patio space. They did have some questions, but did not really issue much comment on a proposed shade structure. We did get one piece of public correspondence only about a half an hour before this meeting. One of the neighboring property owners just wanted clarification for what's going on and was not at all opposed to the request. So that concludes my staff report. I'm happy to take any questions, and we have the applicant here with us tonight. If there's anything else to be gone over, I suppose I should also show the mock-ups. So the applicant had an engineering firm design a site plan for what it would look like. And this is kind of what we're looking at, east being to the right. The patio space would occupy just the left half of the front of the building. And they've designed a layout for how that would appear, this floor plan. So this would be the aerial image. And that's the kind of separation that is being proposed. So now I actually am done.
Elliot, your comments about El Dorado and their pergola, would that be decided differently today?
I think
Would
it
we
would,
view
yeah.
that differently?
I think it would.
Because am I correct? Did they have like a 3-season, like they kind of have some, do they put something over top of it? Zip it up over the winter?
I don't know the answer to that.
I think, okay.
I think they did enclose it with side plastic.
Yeah, I don't think that would be approved today. We had a different building code official in charge at the time that that building was built. And then now that we have full-time legal counsel with the city, I think our interpretation at that time maybe was not correct.
Is
Go
the
ahead.
intent of this is the same building that we've talked about in past meetings, correct?
Yep.
Is the intent for this building owner to make a restaurant in the other half of his building then?
Yes, correct. So there's the
Mhm.
salon suites on the
Yep.
north half of the building where we have the two tattoo special use permits, and then in the southern half, that would be a dining establishment.
And where would parking for that dining be?
So there is, I actually went out and counted on site. They have parking lots, parking spaces painted in the rear of the structure, and then a couple out front. And if the patio were to be installed, they would be compliant with our parking requirements for this use. And I think the total space number is about 21. Memory serves me right.
So just, I guess, to go back to the pergola piece, not to get too hung up, but is there any opening for some kind of pergola structure, but just not to the extent maybe of El Dorado's, or what, where would you view the line today as far as structure, when it becomes a structure? It wouldn't be.
This is where I need my building
Yeah.
code guy on this.
No, I'm just curious and is it relevant?
I think part of the problem is that the building code still doesn't define pergola.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where there's a disjuncture between our definitions and then the building code, which is not a city thing. It's just what we use. It's an international document. So I'm not completely sure.
When El Dorado was built, it was built as a green space facility, correct?
As a what facility?
It was built on green space. There was nothing there.
Yeah, some like older buildings got torn down for it to go up. But yeah, it was more or less just a empty site.
It just appears that it's landscaped. It's put together as a project, as a complete entity. And it just seems like we're adding on something to the front and not knowing what's happening with the rest of the parking that's up front. Does that turn to green space? Just what happens to all this area?
So the parking is intended to remain, which would be legally compliant with all of our zoning rules and regulations. As I mentioned before, he's got, the applicant has parking spaces allocated in the rear of this property as well.
We can circle back probably with additional questions for Elliot later too. If there aren't any right now, we can go ahead and see if there are any comments from the public. The applicant is here tonight and wants to speak. Coming up, state your name and your address for us.
Wade Thompson, 1809 Serenity, Circle, Norwalk, Iowa, 50211. I kind of, I don't know if you just want a little bit more clarification. This particular patio, even though it's covered, it is going to be similar to a pergola. It's just not going to have the cross style beams that you would. We want to use a sun sail instead, which would be very similar. Like there's some that are at like the rec center, and they have them at several other establishments around. It would shield a little bit from water, but it's mainly for sun. And it's essentially just going to be a very simple structure. It's going to be some uprights with the sails stretched across them. And that's basically it. Maybe some planters around it. It only will take, if you were to have parking there, it's only going to take about 2 spaces up. And then there's going to be just enough space. We were hoping to put like a bike rack out in front since it's on the trail, so it's very simple structure, some planters, uprights, and maybe a bike rack on the side.
Mr. Thompson, would your intention be to use it during the winter months too and to cover or anything like that?
I don't think it would be, maybe, as long as on a warm day or something, but no, for the most part, it's going to be a spring and summer thing, maybe a little bit of early fall.
Bill or Nicole, any questions? Applicant?
No,
No, I'm good.
I would like to add one staff comment on this that is not it's not really a staff report thing, which is why I'm saying it now. Staff is 100% supportive of having patios, and patios next to bike trails are all the rage in this part of the country and anywhere with a climate similar to ours. I would note that the recommendations in the staff report mostly fall up against code requirements that we just don't really have exceptions to in town right now. At least for the denial part. I should clarify that. The patio space one, we think that makes total sense. The one about the structure, a little bit different.
Yeah, Elliot, I think you commented on the question, talking about the structure. You had made the comment that we're not, this isn't something we're seeing from others, like we're not getting this request. But really, we are seeing, if El Dorado had been building this today, they would have had to make a similar request, right?
I think
To be
so.
able to get the structure.
Yep.
And it would have fit into the same. An interesting issue we're faced with here
And
tonight.
if we get a lot of requests like this, maybe we need to revise our zoning. But that's not what we're here to do.
Right, right. And as you know, from we need to find a finding of unnecessary hardship in order to grant a variance from the zoning rules here tonight. So if you want to speak to
chime in on
the
that. So
piece
as
of
far-
unnecessary hardship. that'd be
Yeah,
great.
so the unnecessary hardship would be, this establishment, I've made, substantial investments into this property. We put in I believe it's a 2,000 gallon grease trap. We have all new HVAC in the entire facility, built to code. We put a hood vent in, it's a 9-foot hood vent, and it's got a full kitchen in this space. And we dedicated some
Uh-oh.
space that could have been used, for patrons to a bigger kitchen so we could serve a larger crowd in the patio space. That's kind of how we designed this whole suite on that side. Other than that, a direct competitor is El Dorado, we're neighbors, but if they have a patio and our business can't have the patio, people are gonna choose to go there and eat as opposed to coming to us. So we just want it to be equal and have an adequate space.
hey,
Any
Elliot.
oh.
Yeah,
Any
Sorry.
specific comments as to if you were or were not able to have the additional sun shade structure? So if you were able to have the patio, but just not able to have the sun structure?
Yep, we can, I'm very flexible on that. We were just trying to minimize our costs and also give a different look. But if you said just match exactly what El Dorado did, I think we'd be fine with that too. So, you tell us how we can get it done. We'll find something.
Bill, sorry to interrupt you. I think you were making a comment.
that's okay. You could also use portable umbrellas. If you're looking to keep people out of the sun or to draw the crowd in.
Yeah, I think the intention is really, so I'm representing, this is my building. I have tenants that have rented that space. I'm not the owner of this. I'm doing the build out for them, per our lease. We've just discussed what they have at a couple of their other establishments. I believe that they do these sun sales, so they also own 300 Bellhop, Koa Cantina, and they had owned the gas lamp. So they have several other establishments. What they did at 300 is they do the sun sales, and then there's umbrellas and tables underneath them. So we're trying to give it a little bit of a nicer look and appearance. I think that's why they wanted to, look like a little bit nicer patio, but we'd prefer to do that way, but if we could just go the umbrella route.
Can you go back to the other drawing that? I thought there was one that showed the front from a front elevation, maybe?
Was there one that showed a rendering of the? So,
I will say, based on the codes that we have in effect right now, the response to everything the applicant's proposing would be umbrellas. That'd be like the thing that we can't regulate. You can just go do it. Yeah, that's based on Luke and my interpretation of everything. As soon as you start talking about fixing something to the ground, it becomes a structure. And that's the whole thing about accessory structures in the front.
I'd be concerned too, where that structure ties into the face of the building and how it affects the second floor level. And that appearance.
Anything attached to the building would just become part of the principal structure at that point.
This would not be attached to the building.
Mhm.
So it's gonna sit out. There's some landscaping and there's an awning that's about ready to go up on that building. So I don't have the exact dimensions, but I would say it's gonna sit 6 to 8 feet from the front of that building, or at least the first uprights would be. You know, so you'd walk out. I don't know if you can kind of show them with the mouse where that entrance is, kind of, but it's over there. We added a door on the other side where that window is. So that's how you get to the patio. There's some landscaping there, and then the structure would start. So it's gonna be not attached to the building, but close, you know. 6
Can you go
feet.
back to the patio rendering, please?
there'll be an awning coming off the entirety of that building on the mid-level then? Is that what you're saying?
Say that again.
The awning will go across the whole building?
The awning, yep, is gonna go across the full building. And I believe that sticks out roughly 3 feet off the building, and then the structure would start somewhere.
Between the first and the second level?
Yeah, between the first and second, yep.
Is the main entrance for the restaurant then around the backside?
Nope, it's gonna be right on the side. So we have 2 doors. So you got your side door, and then the other door that we put in is if once you go in,
Oh,
to enter into the
yeah.
patio. Yep, that was the intention. This site plan too, was an initial site plan. We have not amended it. I think, initially we were attempting to do a little bit more of a structure with a fence and tie it into the building. We've since just tried to do, just a very simple structure with these sun's sails.
Can I ask a question? Good. Okay, so the definition, right, and the way the code's written excludes permanent structure there.
The definition for what?
Permanent structure. For a structure.
The zoning definition of a structure is something having a fixed location on the ground.
Okay,
Building code definition of a structure is that which is built, which is a little bit less specific. If it has a fixed location on the ground, like it's got a foundation or it's bolted to the ground, that's what our code would consider a structure.
okay. So because the design of this, that's why it's excluded. Because of that distance. It's got nothing to do with setbacks or anything else. That's irrelevant to what this discussion.
In the C2 district, the accessory structures, so anything that's not the main building has to meet the front setback of the zoning district, which is 30 feet.
Okay.
So it is ultimately a setback issue.
If he chose an example to put like some kind of a shade that comes off that building, right? But didn't have anything attached to the ground out there. That might get through the building code.
Yep.
I don't believe that would work. You know, cause we wanted as large a patio space as you guys are gonna allow us, and there's gonna have to be some type of upright or something on the far side of that in
Yeah.
order to extend that shade out as far as we'd like to go.
Your second floor structure won't support tiebacks.
I don't think so.
So to your point, if this were on the other, if the patio were on the other side of the building and there wasn't a setback issue, it wouldn't be an issue for them to have a structure over the seating.
Nope.
It's because we're in that setback area already. Talked about the setback when it comes to just extending the patio out, but this putting a structure there. When you think about setbacks and protecting that setback space, we think about like visibility and those kinds of things. Does the city have a view? Do we have concerns that if this were permitted, this would cause visibility issues or?
We've heard nothing from the
what
DOT
that
on
might-
this at all. DOT governs Highway 28. There's a lot of separation between the front of this building and the travel lanes on the highway. So we don't believe that visibility would be a problem. Again, the setback on this property at one time was 0 feet. It's just because we've rewritten the code a bunch of times across all properties, not just this one. That it's gone from 0 to 25 and now 30 feet. If this were a completely empty site, the setback would be 50 feet. Even our code now has kind of 2 different setbacks. In C2, we think it's appropriate to use the smaller one on here. As I mentioned before, staff is supportive of having patios on trails. That makes a lot of sense. And that generates a lot of traffic. The issue that we're dealing with is just putting a structure, accessory structure in a front setback. We just don't have a code mechanism to point to and say, yes, you can do that. The only way around that is a variance process.
And Elliot, the type of structure being proposed here, are there concerns specific to that structure versus what's at El Dorado, just because it's right there and it's an example? If we were to say permitted, but only you have to do what El Dorado did or less of that structure.
Spatially, you mean like how far out it comes or are you
The
thinking?
substance of like the size of the structure. I guess
Aesthetically,
Yeah, aesthetically.
So are you asking if we would be on board with permitting another pergola? Or
Basically, yes. If we said,
I think fundamentally, yes. We would support that. We still don't have a code mechanism to allow it. If a variance was approved to permit a pergola built there, I think staff could live with it.
can you zoom in on the picture you're on right now? Thanks.
are there any additional questions for the applicant? Sorry, keep it just standing up here. though.
I'm good.
Thanks.
Um, Any additional questions for Elliot? Elliot still just struggling a little bit with if does it defy reason to or to have a finding where we try to make some accommodation here for the applicant, given they're trying to make the best use of this property. It is great to have these patios on trails, is consistent with a neighboring property. the history of the setbacks here, but still limit what they've proposed in a way to try to make it more consistent with like a pergola structure? Is that,
Is there a defensible nexus in that recommendation? Is that what you're
or
asking?
if you're going down that route, or is it already, I mean, you might as well give them the flexibility. What would the city be able to work through with them on that? I mean, we defer to their judgment and the city working.
If the Board of Adjustment grants a variance to allow for a pergola similar to what is next door, the city can work with the applicant on a proposal of that type. One thing that I need to clarify one more time, because I may have misstated it initially. The building code describes covered versus uncovered areas. Amber alert, yikes.
I would
That's
say,
not good.
A area is considered covered when the sky is 50% or less visible. So like that pergola that El Dorado has is considered uncovered space because the sky is more than 50% visible. Based on what my code official has told me, that might influence the palpability of installing a similar structure on an adjacent site. I apologize. I need to use the restroom. I did
Oh,
not plan-
man.
I did not plan.
I hope the cleaning lady is
What's
not.
it?
put that in the minutes.
Can you go back to the aerial that shows El Dorado again? Sorry.
Elliot was navigating that, so
Oh,
wait till. you
gotcha.
Yeah, I don't want to mess up what he's got going on.
It would be nice to see if there's a way to accommodate, I think things to improve that facility would really be appreciated.
I don't know if you guys have been by it recently, you do all
Yeah,
the time.
all the time.
So we're near completion. We're actually gonna try and get occupancy of this space within 2 weeks. It's pretty much done in there. Tile, HVAC's up, bar top's going on, bathrooms are being finished, we'll have the ADA grab bars in. And as soon as that's done, we're gonna try and get occupancy, and I think my tenants are gonna try and open that within 30 days.
You get direct sunlight. My directions are a little bit challenged sometimes. So what's the afternoon, evening
It's actually-
sun situation on the front end there?
It's actually gonna be blocked for the most part by the building itself.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do,
Helpful.
oops. Sorry, I have a quick question, actually. And this is just, I mean, it's related, but has like the stuff that you originally planned to hopefully put up for the sun sale, have you purchased that already, or was that just you needed to get through this process?
We have not purchased yet. We went to a company, we actually have a guy that's designing it, and once we had those specs, then I came to this meeting so we have not spent any money yet on this structure.
Okay, thanks.
Elliot's back, Bill, if you wanted, he had requested to look at
different
something again, I think. What image were you looking for?
El Dorado, just to compare patio sizes.
Probably better if I go to the Beacon site for that.
Hey, there's my house.
That's probably you in the backyard.
Yep, watching the sun come up and go down.
I feel like I also need to make one other statement regarding the patio at El Dorado. That was built shortly after I started, so I'm going a little bit anecdotally here. Their original site plan showed a patio that was 15 feet into the front yard setback with 15 feet of separation to the front property line. Exactly what the code says that you're allowed to do. That's not quite what got built.
You mean they scooched a little forward?
I think they moved their pylons up about 3 feet. These things are not 100% accurate when measuring on the beacon site. But I mean, they are, it's at an angle, but I think they're like 20 feet or maybe a little more out from the building. I'd have to get out there with a tape measure to verify, but
Well-
it was at a time when the city was not as, was a little more concerned with growing commercially. And we probably didn't do a great job doing zoning enforcement on that.
And does that lot have a different setback? Is that not have the same property line?
No, I think
issues?
I think the property line is improperly illustrated on the neighboring property.
Okay.
So I don't want to go down a real long rabbit
Yeah.
hole here. But if you look at
Oh, yeah.
this retracement survey, this kind of gets you an idea of like how jagged the property lines go. The most recent one, whoops, actually, is from this property because it entered probate court. Pretty sure it's this one. So yeah, that's where the property line jogs according to, and the DOT seems to corroborate that difference. The right of way. So in front of Mr. Thompson's property, the right of way, half of the right of way line is 62.5 feet and it's 50 for the neighboring property, which is where we get that extra 12.5 feet that I was talking about.
But that difference here with respect to the subject property would not change the structure, the second piece question.
No.
They still wouldn't be able to, under code, be permitted to put up a structure. Any additional questions? Okay. I think I'm gonna go ahead and close the hearing then if we don't have any other questions. It is 7:10. We'll close the public hearing and move to deliberation on this variance request. And maybe, given that we have two pieces here, if we start with the first issue. Back to the. And the request to permit the encroachment of a patio space beyond the required 15-foot front setback. And I guess, start there unless Nicole or Bill, you want to jump in. I would just say, I think based on, we've had a lot of discussion here tonight, the extensive comments from the staff, the history of this site, the property line here compared to neighboring properties, and the use and investment the applicant's been putting in. I think we've seen unnecessary hardship shown. It's not harmful to the neighbors here to permit this patio to go into that 15-foot front setback. So I think approval, I'm in favor of at least approving this, the first variance request.
How does this affect drive aisles getting to the back property for parking?
The drive aisle would be unaffected by the patio.
So he's gonna take the patio all the way to the corner of the building.
Just go on the aerial, it would be something like this. So the drive aisle would be more or less unaffected.
Sounded like it would still be 15 foot from the trail. Right? Is that what the number was?
Give or take, yeah. I think 12.5-ish feet.
You're gonna be up at that level before you're
So distance
checking
from
traffic to pull out.
distance from the wall is about 40. And
Can you
he's
square up, can you square up your bottom right corner of the patio, please? Bring it down and square it.
Are you asking me to?
Yeah, you're the guy driving the computer there.
I'm just
Sorry.
scratching this bit.
You're doing great. This is what I do all day long.
Sorry, what were you asking me to do?
It looks like the bottom right corner of the patio is not square. Drag it towards El Dorado.
I gotta redraw it. I don't have a way to edit the thing.
Oh, really? Oh, huh.
Yeah, technology is wonderful.
So go from the back of the building on the corner and draw it all the way up.
Doing
There
my
you go.
best.
You're doing fine.
All right, that's pretty darn close. Yeah, it's about 40 feet-ish from edge of the trail to the wall of the building. Mr. Thompson is proposing. 22 feet of patio. 22 feet and an inch and a half, roughly. 23 if you count the width of the posts.
Hey, Elliot, I think maybe a good, like, for me on a visual side, there was a picture that had two trucks that would maybe sit where that patio potentially is going to go. I don't know where it was at when you were going through your slides, but that might give a better representation of just kind of how that would look. They were in the front. They were parked. There was like a black one that was backed in and another one. See where those are in the gray out? There was another picture that those were not grayed out.
It might
Just to-
drop one. Potentially.
And maybe it was the aerial bill.
This
It's
one,
not. Yeah, I didn't know if that would help Bill just to kind of get an idea of like, no, yep, there.
Yeah, I just think I feel that bringing the patio square off off the side face of the building out forward, you're gonna have a choke point at your inboard and outboard traffic at that front corner of the patio.
Are you thinking, Bill, from like a distribution, like bigger trucks or semis? I mean, obviously they've got the trailers there in the back that they've
No,
been
no.
able to get back there.
No, but your patio is gonna take away that part of that drive lane.
The
So-
swing.
this drive lane though, this thing is 22, 23 feet wide. Just for reference,
It would be parking if it weren't.
all of that will still be, that's all still gonna be open for ingress and egress.
Okay,
Any comments additionally, Bill or Nicole, or any motion?
I'm good. I motion to approve on this, if I can do that, I guess.
Yep. And just to be clear, I definitely give up to the sheets. You motion to approve to permit the encroachment of the patio space beyond the required 15-foot setback. We
Correct.
haven't gotten to the accessory shape. Okay. And Bill?
I second.
Hold on. I guess those in favor?
Maybe
Aye.
Is this on,
This is on the first one.
right? Is there dimensional qualifiers or is it as shown in the exhibit attached to the report? If it's just encroach into the front setback, then that'll let them go all the way
Yeah.
up to the trail.
As shown on the exhibit.
As shown, okay,
Yeah.
as shown in the exhibit, the floor plan exhibit in the site plan. So if you could repeat that, I
Correct.
just want to clarify.
as shown in the floor plan exhibit attached to the report.
I approve.
I second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Well, that does still leave the variance to permit the installation of an accessory shade structure within the front setback area, matching the dimensions of the patio space. I think this one's really challenging for all of the reasons we discussed. I don't know what you are thinking, Bill, Nicole.
I mean, I struggle with this one I understand, kind of what we're up against. I personally don't have a problem with the sun sails. I've seen them in a lot of different types of establishments, and I think, it is I think sometimes it can be prettier depending on how those, outdoor surfaces are maintained, as long as the sun sails are kept clean versus some of the pergolas, because obviously we've seen some of those that haven't been well taken care of, that can eventually become an eyesore too. With that coming in through our main area, I don't necessarily have a problem with that sail shade. I also feel like it differentiates space from a home or from a business owner standpoint, but I guess, I know we're kind of up against a few different things, so I'm okay with either one. To make it to be adhesive to, oh, sorry, my watch is listening to me. To make it be adhesive to, getting all the regulations, but I personally am not opposed to the sail shades.
I think there's other ways you can differentiate your patio space for your bar than a permanent structure.
Yeah, I personally, from an aesthetic standpoint, I understand the umbrellas and stuff like that. That is not something that I would prefer to see coming through town. So I'm okay if we couldn't do the sales shades and we did just what El Dorado did, that would be something that I would feel like would be a better option. I don't know. I just feel like some of those patio umbrellas are somewhat of a liability when it gets windy, and we all know that it's windy out here. And I just feel like they're kind of an eyesore, personally.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Nicole. I think it's an unfortunate result
Yeah.
to push the applicant here towards something that is less attractive
Mm-hmm.
drive, and to move them away from investing more capital for a better look.
Right. If it was in the back of the building, it may not be as big of a deal, but I just feel like, these are representations of our community as we're coming through,
The main drag.
yeah. So I think it's really important to make sure that it's, obviously, this owner has done a great job of revitalizing that particular property and put a lot of investment in it so far. So I just feel like we should respect his wishes to be able to kind of move forward and still make it very aesthetically pleasing and to complement everything else that we're doing up closer to the town center too.
But right now the code doesn't allow us to build it.
Yeah, it would be, it would have to be a variance. So similar to the variance we granted the
Right.
setback here for our role is, in order to grant the variance, we need to determine the patio, does the accessory structure setback create an unnecessary hardship? Does it have a negative impact? Would the approval have a negative impact on the neighboring surrounding property owners? And does the site exhibit any unique conditions that prevent alternative zoning compliant site design to that was proposed? So it's not permitted, but we have the ability to vary what's permitted based on these standards. So the question becomes, do we think there's adequate finding of that unnecessary hardship.
What's the peak of the sun shade, the sun's, or the sail shade, sorry. Ugh.
What's that, Bill?
Like meaning how tall it is in the middle? Is that what you're asking, Bill?
Yes, what's the peak of it?
That's a good question. I don't think we've been determined that completely. We're probably gonna try to split the difference between the first and second floor, I would think, of the commercial spaces and the residential spaces. There is an awning that's coming out over, so it's probably gonna fall on somewhere in the range of 9 to 12 feet, potentially, I would say.
The typical the typical maximum accessory structure height in Norwalk is 15 feet.
What is the pergola height at El Dorado? Do we know?
I can try and guess if you give me a second.
So here it would have a peaked roof though, and the pergola is more of a flat, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it kind of like drapes, I guess, in a sense. Isn't that right, Wade?
Yeah, these ones would be pretty tight, I would say.
They'd be drawn tight. If
Drawn
you were to
tight.
drape, if you were to drape anything, you'd lose it in the storm or the snow.
Yeah, I just meant, so what I was envisioning of whether it was an angled thing or like if you think of the new Sportsplex, they have the awnings that are more of a triangular type box situation. So each one of these complexes kind of either has like more of a triangular that kind of has like a slope to it a little bit. I'm not saying like a gradual, like a big deflection. It's just kind of, it's more of a art piece of a triangular, or yours going to be kind of square and all one piece?
I think so. Those ones are pulled tight and they're kind of wrapped around a steel frame.
Okay.
These ones are a little bit simpler. Do you have those specs that I sent in by chance?
The product sheet.
The product sheet.
Yeah, give me a second.
Basically, these uprights have like a hardware that attaches into like a ring on these shades, and they're tightened, and so that there's some tension across them. There would be some type of angle just, for water and things like that.
Yeah.
I had a product sheet on there. It's
We've got a
hard for me
long
to
email
explain it.
chain, so. Sent a separate email. Wasn't that?
That's the only.
Oh, that's, sorry.
Yeah,
Oh, that's right. You said you're right. It was
slate there.
my bad. Jeez.
So there's kind of the hardware up there to show a little bit of it, but. They're on a cable and they're pulled tight.
Okay. What color is proposed? Just curious.
Well, so I'm not sure exactly what they're looking at doing. The inside of this space is white, black, and some wood trim. I'm not sure if I don't think they're gonna go like a bright color, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
That's tenants. And if you guys want to specify a color that they have to do, I think they would take what they can get. We would, but that's kind of what they look like.
Yeah. So are they thinking of that more like triangular one, kind of like on those playgrounds and stuff?
Yeah, it's gonna be the shape, it's gonna be a square, but because the way you put the uprights, you have your border uprights, and then you have a center upright. And that
Okay.
4 triangles to make the square.
Okay. So kind of like more third line down in the middle, like that white one, similar.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
All the same elevation. I know there's a picture down there where they have them at different heights and things. These would all be they would all be the same.
Okay.
So there would be splits between, like, so like there would be open spots too. It wouldn't be just a fully complete
Yeah,
coverage.
yeah, the way, yeah, there's gonna be splits in between, I guess, where the two triangles meet.
Okay.
So,
So be-
yeah. It's not gonna be totally
It's
waterproof.
not like a
or anything.
solid
Yeah, no.
over like a gazebo type thing.
No,
Okay. So do we find that the setback regulations are creating an unnecessary hardship here, given their restriction of these types of shading structures within the setback area? And considering these, you know, a structure that needs to be part of the principal and then adhere to that setback. Are these different enough that we find grounds for variance here?
I hate to ask you to repeat that again.
I'm trying to thread this here. It's a little bit of a
I
struggle.
know,
I think that when we get to the third point about the site exhibiting unique characteristics, I think that history here, this is a building that was constructed in, I think you said 1970. The history of the setback requirements over the years. We have a property that they've invested a great deal to try to renovate and revitalize, and so it is closer to the property line than something potentially constructed today under current zoning. It does put it in a unique situation that trying to make best use of this property, which includes a restaurant.
I'm sorry, let's call it a bar. It's a bar on his plan.
Okay.
It is.
Is there food will there be food?
Yes, he's got a 2-grill and a flat top grill.
Zoning ordinance doesn't differentiate between a restaurant and a bar in this situation.
I'm just putting the label that he put on the drawing.
I guess just the point I was making is that given that the building, if we're gonna start from scratch today, that the building would probably be placed in a different position to make this work. So I think there is some grounds for certainly the uniqueness of this lot and then the history and what they're trying to work with here. But on the first piece, really, do we find that there is an unnecessary hardship? So that's the point I was making where I was struggling through that. I don't know, Nicole or Bill, if you have strong feelings.
How do you define that? What do you define that as?
Well, I mean, I guess I would speak to it as like, when that building was originally built, it wasn't with the regard of the street being widened and all the things, changing. And those are all great things that we welcome into our community. But, being built back when it was with the original setbacks that it would have had, we wouldn't even be having this conversation, So I understand where there's like changes and we have to go ahead and, go through the process. But there is also, I mean, when did we say this was built originally?
1978.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of adaptability there that I think that should be in consideration as well. You can't pick that building up, El Dorado is just right across the way and that's a new construction building. And, they're pushing those limits too. So I kind of rule them as in the same categories, in my opinion.
Yeah, and in just looking at the staff rationale on the first criteria, it's noted the purpose of the setback requirement is to preserve visual clearance, uniformity, and openness of the streetscape for motorists and pedestrians. Here, it's difficult. Again, you have El Dorado right next door that has a similar structure going out a similar distance. Say that
But they
allowing,
they also put all their parking in back and landscape the front. To create a streetscape.
No,
There's
the
a green
majority of the parking is in the rear on this structure too.
It is, but there's parking in front. There's no green space.
The lot technically meets the green space requirement. And it, again, this is a non-conforming lot, so
Yeah,
I haven't
it is that.
thing. But we have to measure it based off of the entire lot itself. And there isn't really a thing in our zoning ordinance that says you need to have your green space distributed a certain way. And so it fulfills the green space requirement on a technicality, but it does fulfill it.
Understood.
So Wade, question on the bike rack, are you thinking like where this blue line would be? Would you have just right off the actual trail there? Would that be kind of where that rack would be, is kind of where El Dorado's green space would be? That would potentially be where that bike rack would be?
Yes.
Okay, just curious. All right, thank you. I don't have any other questions personally.
I don't
Bill,
either. Thanks.
any motion?
I mean, I personally motion to approve a structure. Again, I don't have an issue with the proposed sunshades, but so that's just my personal opinion.
Nicole, that was a motion.
Yes, it was a motion to approve.
Can we, question for you, Elliot, I guess on the motion, can we motion to approve the variance for the structure with the city's continued oversight of the selection of materials and in a way to preserve the visual clearance, uniformity, and openness of the streetscape
In design.
and pedestrians?
So the city doesn't really have any guidelines about design at all. An example for a different type of project is we have a series of architectural materials that are required depending on the zoning district. We can make a real ugly building and still meet all of our code requirements. And if Ed has to review it at city council and it meets the code requirements, technically he's got to approve it by law. Not everything that meets code is necessarily pretty. We try to stay away from legislating design because that starts getting into legislating art, which gets into legislating free speech. That's just a realm we steer clear of. If I may offer a suggestion on what to do here, I could foresee a motion recommending approval of shade structures occupying the area within the patio space. And basically what I mean by that is if you have a shade structure with a post in the middle, that post needs to be positioned so that the extent of the shade structure is within the footprint of the patio area. Maybe that's a way of kind of rewording what I'm hearing from you guys.
There,
Just
yeah,
throwing that out.
I agree with you 1,000%. I think there's too many variables in granting a shade structure without seeing said shade structure, elevations, materials. I mean, I think, I hate to say, with El Dorado, maybe we got a little lucky that it's not that bad. But I just don't feel comfortable granting free reign.
I suppose if the design / aesthetic element is important to you, then make a motion and vote on it regarding the physical extent of these objects. And then after concluding that vote, offer up your individual comments on color, if that's.
Well, I'm not a color guy.
I can take that and use some common sense and proceed with the applicant thereafter. If we want all earth tone canvas, I know what that means.
That's not it. I'm just envisioning a circus tent in front of a 2-story apartment building because the center post is going to be up that tall.
Ah, it sounds like a fireworks tent, Bill. We can't touch those.
I know.
Nicole, would you care to
Oh, this is a tough one. Yeah, I mean, as far as colors go, definitely it would be one of those situations of nothing bold colors. I also, while I'm okay with these sunshades, I don't like the white ones because I think they don't carry themselves well over time, which is why a lot of people go with a color. So something like maybe more neutral. So those are earth tones, and there's a hard way to say not white. But I mean, obviously it seems like Bill's kind of leaning towards the more aesthetic side, and correct me if I'm wrong, on the more of a pergola type based.
Correct.
Okay, so here's one question. What in the event if they did a pergola and wanted to, and Wade, kind of key me into what the tenant's thoughts are on these particular sunshades. Is it because they want full shade? Like I've seen some of these pergolas that have had that type of netting that would be used in the sun sail shade to provide more blockage from the sun.
I think they're honestly just looking to have some type of patio space. They're super flexible on whether we do a pergola or the sails. They have them at some of their other establishments, and I think they like the look. And they have a company that they work with that designs this that I'm working with now. And I think they just prefer the looks.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, some of those other buildings are a little bit more contemporary in style, so I can see that, and some of the other establishments that you named. I mean, if we're just getting to a goal of getting some sun in there, I'm okay with doing the pergola if that's what Bill's willing to vote on too.
Wade, what was one of the establishments you mentioned
300 and okay.
that might be a good comp for it?
Does the chicken kind of have those?
No, I don't think they've ever added them.
Right there on top, I think.
No.
Can't really.
And
see
the-
very well.
I watched a
I'll
video.
go
on-
to, I'll go to a different
I
view,
was
but
gonna say, I watched a
it's
video
on the
on it,
rooftop.
and it only shows it in parts of the video.
It's kind of similar basically to also like Nolan Plaza, I think, has them too.
They just don't have sales on them.
Oh, is there another one that you said that was a good comp, maybe?
I don't
Doesn't-
know.
Doesn't Koa have it?
They have a
Co-
pergola. I know it's like wrapped in something, maybe.
I feel like theirs did, like a red one maybe.
So they did like a pergola style there.
Oh yeah, they did.
But as you drive by it, you assume or perceive it as part of the structure.
There you
Maybe,
go.
maybe because it's weathered, maybe how they structured it, but
Yeah, I think Nolan Plaza has the actual ones that are what's in my brain of kind of. I don't know if they leave them up all the time. Okay, I lied.
Wow,
Whenever
in the
they
pod-
take those
they're in the
pictures,
pods.
that's the year that
this
they
is
did.
very recent street view because these seesaws were there just like last month.
Yeah, maybe they haven't put them back up yet. I don't know. I swear they had them. I swear they have them at different times of the year.
Yeah,
It's not Tipsy Crow anymore. A little bit, is it?
it'll still go there, I think. I know the dude got a little.
It's new owner.
There they are. That's what they look like.
Gonna be on the.
yeah.
Yep.
See if I can get down the street a tiny bit.
And that's not what they're supposed to look like. They're supposed to be pulled tight. Those
Sure.
are,
No, I got you.
maintained. That bar has been under distress for.
A little bit of wall time.
I mean, and that would be an honest similar situation of the height, I would assume, because that's got to be what, 12 feet off the ground, we would assume, maybe
Probably 10.
10.
would be my guess. Maybe slightly under.
Yeah, and they chose, so those ones, our designer, the company that we're going to. Chose to put a center upright, because that's what happens when you don't have a center upright, you can't pull them tight, they kind of get a droop in the middle, so that's why. You know, when you do them in a triangle and create a square with the triangles, you won't have that. Dip in the middle.
You're talking about this one, this style more or less.
It's more, no, next one down, in the middle on the third line. Kind of, it's something similar like that, well, there's no upright in that one, is there? It's basically if you go to, I have that rudimentary drawing that we have. On there, it was hand drawn. You know, if you have a center upright, you can make 4 triangles the shape of a square, essentially. And then what you're seeing there on the top side, that would be open air. It looks like beams that make it.
Yeah, that's how I was viewing
That's
it, as the
open air.
beams. Okay.
Yep, so that's just pulled tight. That's an aerial view of the top of the structure.
So there's 4 posts on each corner and then 1 in the middle.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it gets difficult to get into the weeds of color and aesthetic. We obviously want,
Yep.
if it's approved, to look appropriate, but I think it will be challenging to somehow build that into our approval. There has to be some trust here with the applicant in the process.
If you want to paint your house pink and you're not in an HOA, doesn't mean
Right, well, that's what I was just gonna ask. On the pergola, is there any restrictions on what color they could paint that
none.
or stain it?
Nope,
Yeah, so it's,
you're
So it does-
allowed, you're,
But it opens it up and that is what it is. So I guess what we're faced with is there?
do we want to allow a structure?
Right. And the applicant's been it's been very flexible and it sounds like they would be able to work around not being able to have the structure if it's not permitted. Hopefully the building will block afternoon sun for the most part, so they're still able to use the patio, but I'm sure we've all sat on patios before and it is nice to have those shades, and it would make it a bit more appealing. But given the restrictions in the code and the information we've heard, where are we gonna land? Bill, where are you at?
We have a motion on the table, just for the record.
Yep, you're correct.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was just asking.
Oh, you're fine.
Bill, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, if I were going there, I'd want to sit in the back, not in the front patio on long 28. But that's my own personal opinion. I would disapprove for the variance for a structure.
Disapprove? Is that,
Yes,
and Nicole, your motion was to approve
correct.
Yep.
structure within the,
Some kind of a structure that we could agree on as far as the shade goes. So. I mean, after looking at that, I really don't have a problem with either the similarity of the one that's like a El Dorado or the sail shade.
can we make it specific to sunshade or pergola?
Sure.
But nothing greater than that, because a structure could presumably be built out then to be in full structure if we just say structure, right?
Yeah, you want to
Yeah.
specify style of physical style thing. But
So does that have to be one or the other then?
you could say either or.
Okay. I approve either or the sail shade or a pergola.
So you're motioning to allow either of those things within the patio area as defined by the exhibit in the staff report.
Yes.
Okay, she's motioning. Hillary, you got that?
Yep.
Nicole motioning that I just said.
Yep.
It's okay to paraphrase.
Nope, I got it.
I'll second that motion.
I think Bill has to second it, even if he might vote against it. I don't think the chair can second motions.
I'll
So,
second it.
okay,
Now we'll do a vote. McLaughlin,
Yes.
Miller,
No,
Parker,
Yes.
this is the time when I wish we had Jim Doherty here, because I can't remember if it's simple majority or if 3 votes are needed. I will find that out and report that to you, Mr. Thompson, okay?
Okay.
But we've concluded our vote, and that's the end of the item.
So we're closed on that item. And do we need a motion to adjourn?
Yep.
Or motion to adjourn?
Yes.
All
I
those-
second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Thanks, Bill and Nicole. Appreciate you hopping on the Zoom.
You betcha.
Thanks, guys.
Yep, thanks for your time.
Thanks.